Okay, so once again, good morning, everyone. And again, thank you to the 92 students who still joined us this morning. Okay, so we will start with first special law, our PDIC or Philippine Deposit Insurance Corporation law. So just a brief history covering the PDIC. So kabantay mo ana when you visit, kinsa naman ninyo naka-visit og bank. If mo visit mo sa bank, inigsulod ninyo, makita mo ng mga small signages baka on top of the desks baron sa ato ang mga front of mga CSR na to. Aga nang makita ninyo nga mga tellers, di ba? Makita ninyo dila PDIC or insured by PDIC. So just like in the USA, deposit insurance in the Philippines was born out of the need to stabilize the banking system from a rash of withdrawals that led to runs. In the US, disruptions caused by bank failures occurred during the 1800s up to the 1930s. While numerous solutions were put forth, many of them were based on the deposit insurance principle. So what are these rash of withdrawals? This usually happens if you know that a particular bank where you placed your money, where you deposited your money is about to go bankrupt. So if you have this mga hiring-hiring, mga kadungog ka nga ang bank, let's say bank number 1 is about to close, and then you know that you have a deposit there. So dagsa ang mga depositors dito to claim their withdrawals. So that's what we mean by rush of withdrawals. So solutions to stabilize the US banking industry were originally implemented at the level of the state and initially solicited support from banks on a voluntary basis. As the banking crisis in the US worsened in the 1930s, the US Congress passed the Banking Act of 1933, which created the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. So you notice nga nagkopya-kopya ra jud si Philippines na sa name. So by its very name, the FDIC provided deposit insurance on a national level, starting at $2,500 per depositor, and made membership by banks mandatory. So from the name itself, the deposit insurance is actually an insurance on the deposit such that if a certain bank closes, you as the depositor will not be feeling worried that you will lose your deposits. So 30 years later after this, the Philippines went through a similar banking crisis. In order to stabilize the situation and restore confidence in banks, the Philippine government created its own version of the deposit insurance system through RA 3591. And this same law, this RA 3591, created the PDIC or the Philippine Deposit Insurance Corporation on June 22, 1963. And the aim is to protect depositors and help maintain financial stability. However, unlike the federal deposit insurance of the US, the Philippines initially adopted a voluntary membership by banks in the PDIC. So for the US, the membership of the banks with FDIC is mandatory, while at the onset here in the Philippines, the membership of the banks in the PDIC is merely voluntary. So meaning, if a specific bank did not register as a member in the PDIC, that means the deposits in such bank are not insured. Okay. So Mr. Estanislao, then Special Assistant to Central Bank Governor Castillo and later Director of the PDIC itself, was tasked to prepare the manuscript for RA 3591. Estanislao was quoted to have said that philosophy behind deposit insurance is for the government to protect the small unsophisticated depositors who comprise the majority and not the big ones who are more discriminatory. So the depositors that are um, mainly benefited by the creation of the PDIC are those small depositors, because later we will find out that although there is an insurance on the deposits, there is still a maximum insurance. So meaning if your deposit, let's say example, mostly for corporate depositors, their deposits are huge, no? Dako kaayog amount. So what is being insured is only a specific amount. Anything beyond the specific minimum amount will not be covered by the PDIC anymore. The foundation of the statement of Director Stanislaw is confidence, the major ingredient that makes any financial system flourish. So confidence meaning confidence on the part of the depositors. No, we put confidence on the banks. So para dili ta magsigiguri sa ato ang deposits dito sa banks. So if you take confidence away, the financial system crumbles like a house of cards. It's also why President Roosevelt in his first fireside chat to the people of the USA on March 12, 1933 said that after all, there is an element in the readjustment of our financial system more important than currency, more important than gold, and that is the confidence of the people. So again, we highlight the major purpose of the creation of the deposit insurance system is to put confidence sa ato ang financial system. So in the Philippines, the PDIC commenced operations in 1968 after the appointment of the PODs and the release of the PDIC's initial permanent insurance fund in the amount of 5 million. A year later, RA 5571 made banks membership in the PDIC mandatory. So ano siya, no, at the onset, the membership of the banks with PDIC is merely voluntary, but later on it was converted into a mandatory requirement of the banks. So thereafter, a series of government actions led to the increase in the maximum deposit insurance coverage for depositors. So sa una, under RA 3591, the insurable deposit is only 10,000, but karon dako na siya as compared sa anti. So if you can see here, in 1963, when PDIC started its operations, no, ang deposit insurance is kuan lang kutob lang sa 10,000. So in 1978, it was increased to 15,000 until naabot siya og 500,000. The PDIC charter was further amended in 2009 as a preemptive measure to build confidence in the banking system amid the brewing global crisis during that time. Aside from the doubling of maximum deposit insurance coverage from 250 to 500, so if you notice here, diba? From 250, it went up to 500,000 in 2009. The PDIC was granted the flexibility to adjust the maximum deposit insurance coverage when the financial stability of the banking system is threatened. So therefore, the law grants the PDIC the right to adjust or to change the maximum deposit insurance coverage if it feels that there is a need to do so. The latest amendments to the PDIC charter also provided for institutional and financial strengthening measures to build up the deposit insurance fund. Deposit insurance fund, this is the fund specifically set aside to answer for the insurance claims and to reinforce PDIC's role as a member of the country's financial safety net while continually providing depositor protection. PDIC's co-regulatory powers were also expanded in terms of determining insured deposits, examining deposit accounts in cases of finding of unsafe and unsound banking practices, and conducting special bank examinations. Now, based on the table, we found out that the maximum insured deposit coverage or insurance deposit coverage is now 500,000. However, there are deposits that are still considered not insured. Okay, later we will find out what are these deposits nga dili within the coverage of the PDIC. So if a certain deposit is not covered under PDIC, that means that such deposit is not insured. Therefore, in the event of bank closure, you cannot ask PDIC to return your money. So these are the frequently asked questions in relation to PDIC. So what is PDIC? So it is a government instrumentality created in 1963 by virtue of RA 591 and so on. So we already covered this a while ago. So the aim is to protect the depositing public and promote financial stability. Or in short, we create confidence. We promote confidence with the financial system or the banking system. And then PDIC now has the authority to help depositors have quicker access to their insured deposits should their bank close, resolve problem banks while still open, hasten the liquidation process for closed banks, and mete out stiffer sanctions and penalties against those who engage in unsafe and unsound banking practices. So aside from an insurer, no wala pa siyang insurer because siya man ang insure sa atong deposits, PDIC also is the one tasked to liquidate a bank in the event of closure. So if na bangko nga mag-close, mo liquidate ana. So ang administration and management of the bank that is about to close will be turned over to PDIC, and PDIC will be the one to liquidate the assets and the liabilities of satisfy the liabilities of the bank. Then the PDIC is an attached agency to the Department of Finance. So under siya ni Department of Finance. The PDC's overall mandate is to provide deposit insurance coverage for the depositing public to help promote public confidence and stability in the economy. So we already appreciate this concept. What are the functions of the PDIC? So PDIC acts as a deposit insurer. It is also a co-regulator of banks. I say co-regulator because mainly, di ba, banks are regulated by the BSP or the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. But PDIC actually plays a role as a co-regulator. And then PDIC acts as a receiver and liquidator of closed banks. Okay. So what is the PDIC's maximum deposit insurance coverage? So again, that is already 500,000 per depositor. And then that is per depositor take. So take note, pila ganito? 500,000. Ang kanang 500,000 is per depositor. Per depositor. So per tao, dili per account. Alright? So for example, you have 2 deposit accounts in a specific bank. Let's say bank A. And then sa imong first deposit, let's say imong first deposit is a savings account. Savings account nimo of 500,000. And then you also have a checking account in that same bank worth 300,000. So may 500,000 savings, nasa kay 300,000 checking account. Yeah, let's say na-close si bank A. How much ang imong pwede ma-claim na deposit insurance? So only 500,000. Okay, because the 500,000 is on a per depositor basis, not per account. So 500, bali total nimo tanan. So all deposit accounts by a depositor in a closed bank maintained in the same right and capacity shall be added together. So in my example, to simplify things, no, you have 500,000 savings and then you have 300,000 checking account. So you have to add both. So you have 500 plus 300, that's 800,000. But then again, the maximum deposit insurance coverage is only 500,000. Therefore, you can only pay 500,000 from the PDIC. So again, under RA 9576, the PDIC may actually propose to adjust the MDIC, meaning it could increase the MDIC being maximum deposit insurance coverage. So yeah, so PDIC has that power subject to the approval of the President of the Philippines in case of a condition that threatens the monetary and financial stability of the banking system that may have systemic consequences. So being also a co-regulator, diba? Co-regulator man siya sa banks. So PDIC has this data and information regarding the monetary and financial stability of the banking system. So based on such data, if PDIC thinks that there is a need to change the MDIC, then it could do so, but it needs approval of the president before the new MDIC will be finalized. So what is an insured deposit? The term insured deposit means the amount due to any bona fide depositor for legitimate deposits. So only for legitimate deposits in an insured bank, net of any obligation of the depositor to the insured bank as of date of sure but not to exceed 500%. So again, let's go back. Insured deposit means amount due to any bona fide depositor. So bona fide depositor for legitimate deposits. Okay, but this is already net of any obligation. Therefore, in my previous example, if you have savings of 500,000 savings account, then checking account of 300,000, so you have 800,000. But what if you also have a bank loan, nakautang pod ka sa bangko? Let's say ang imong utang is at 400,000. So you have 800,000 total, and then minus your obligation to the bank or liability to the bank in the form of your bank loan. So minus niyo siya, more na imuhang insured deposit. But again, you need to apply the threshold, which is only 500,000. Anything beyond that is not anymore insured. So what if you have a joint account with somebody? A joint account shall be insured separately from any individually owned deposit account. So what does this mean? For about ang joint account, kung sa law pa na to, sa obligations and contracts, o sa law in general, a joint account is considered as more of separate entity. So for example, you and your boyfriend, now let's say, you as an individual, you have a deposit in bank A worth 500,000, and then your boyfriend said as an individual has a deposit in that same bank, let's say 500,000 then, and then you both opened a joint account, let's say for the purpose of saving for your wedding. So you open a joint account, say for 500,000 din. So in the event of the closure of such bank, pila ba ang makuha ninyo sa imong boyfriend? So you as an individual, because your deposit account is individually owned, you will get the 500,000. And then your boyfriend also has an individual deposit account, so he should also get the 500,000. Then what happens to your joint account? For the joint account, you will also be able to get that 500,000 because a joint account is insured separately from any individually owned deposit account. So, however, RA 9576 stipulates that PDIC will not pay deposit insurance for the following accounts or transactions. Therefore, there are certain deposits that are excluded from the coverage of PDIC. So if excluded sila from the coverage of PDIC, that means that these deposits are not insured. So if you want to really insure, what if naakay ka ng dako nga deposits but wala siya na cover sa PDIC. What is your remedy then? So your remedy, if you want to insure that, is to get another insurance from a private insurer, correct? So mangita mo og kanang another insurer nga mo cover sa insurance for that amount na wala na include sa coverage sa PDIC. Okay, so here are those accounts that are not covered under our PDIC. Investment products such as bonds, securities, and trust accounts. Deposit accounts which are actually unfunded, fictitious, or fraudulent. That's why, if you remember, when we defined insured deposits, diba, I have emphasized there na dapat ano siya, legitimate deposit. So if it is actually unfunded, fictitious, or fraudulent, then we could say that the deposit is not legitimate, and consequently, since di man siya legitimate, it will be excluded from the coverage of PDIC. Deposit accounts constituting or emanating from unsafe and unsound pay practices, because it will then defeat the purpose of the PDIC. And deposits that are determined to be proceeds of an unlawful activity as defined under your AMLA or anti-money laundering law. So for example, if it is proven that this deposit, income deposit from 500,000, for example, is actually funded from an illegal activity, let's say drugs, or ang kanang 500,000 nga suod sa imong account is kuan na siya ransom money because kidnapper de ka. So that one will not be covered by PDIC, of course. Now later we will get to know what are those unlawful activities, no, as defined under our AMLA or anti-money laundering. So are all banks members of PDIC? So membership of bank, yes. So because membership of banks to PDIC is now mandatory as compared to the start jud, diba? The original law creating PDIC just says voluntary, but after several amendments, the membership of banks to PDIC is now mandatory. Therefore, all operating banks are now members of PDIC. What type of deposits are insured by PDIC? So except for the exclusions stipulated in 9576. So what are these except for the exclusions? Kato atong dimension ganina, kato investment accounts, no? Kato mga from unsafe and unsound banking practices. Katong money that are proceeds from an unlawful activity under AMLA. So kato siya, except from the exclusions stipulated in RA 9576. Deposits of all commercial banks, savings and mortgage banks, rural banks, private development banks, co-op banks, savings and loan associations, as well as branches and agencies in the Philippines of foreign banks and all other corporations offers to perform banking functions in the Philippines are insured with the PDIC. So meaning if you are asked what types of deposits are insured by PDIC, we will define this by residual definition. We say residual definition, kung dili siya excluded, that means insured siya. Okay, so what we should only remember are those exclusions. So if dili, wala siya na-appeal sa lista sa exclusions, then it is safe to assume that that deposit is insured by PDIC. So as for Philippine banks with branches outside the country, the law stipulates that subject to the approval of the board of directors, any insured bank with branch outside of the Philippines may elect to include for insurance its deposit obligations payable at such branch. So from this statement, we could infer that that those deposits made in the overseas branches of Philippine banks. So say for example, Philippine bank, let's say BPI. Let's just say na siya branch outside Philippines. So ang katong deposits dito nga branch, pwede sa dili i-insure by PDIC. So that is now in the discretion of the board of directors whether they want this insured by PDIC or not. But the fact remains that for all deposits in the Philippines, within the Philippine jurisdiction, these deposits are covered by PDIC, except those that are specifically excluded. So what types of deposits are insured by PDIC? Foreign currency deposits, di ba kay dili man tanan deposit accounts is in Philippine peso. You can also open foreign currency deposits. So foreign currency deposits are also insured by PDIC pursuant to RA 6426, which is an act instituting a foreign currency deposit system in the Philippines and for other purposes. And pursuant to Central Bank Circular number 13, depositors may receive payment in the same currency in which the insured deposit is denominated. So if you own a foreign currency deposit here in the Philippines, let's say you have a dollar deposit in BDO, that is also covered by our PDIC. So we already know this as excluded. So these are not insured by PDIC. Are deposits maintained in branches and subsidiaries of foreign banks operating in the Philippines insured by PDIC? The answer is yes. So for example, there is a foreign bank, let's say Chase Bank or Bank of America. Let's say they have a branch here in the Philippines, and then you deposited your money there sa katong branch niya. That is also insured by PDIC. The PDIC charter provides that the deposits in branches and subsidiaries of foreign banks licensed by the BSP to perform banking functions in the Philippines are insured by the PDIC. I think we have covered this a while ago. So how about those deposits now maintained in Philippine banks with the branches outside the Philippines? Are they insured by the PDIC? So the PDIC charter provides that a Philippine bank may elect, so from the terminology, may elect, so may or may not, depending on the board of directors. So to verify whether, for example, if you have deposits in a branch of a Philippine bank outside the Philippines, if you want to know if your deposits are covered by the deposit insurance, you may inquire with the account officer of your branch if you are doubtful. So what specific risks to a bank does PDIC cover? PDIC covers only the risk of a bank closure ordered by the monetary board. So this means that makabayad lang si Philippine Deposit Insurance Corporation sa katong maximum deposit insurance coverage in the event of bank closure that is ordered by the monetary board. So therefore, not all bank closures. So for example, if the bank incurred losses due to theft, fire, or closure by reason of strike or existence of public disorder, revolution, or civil war, these are not covered by PDIC. So if your bank where your deposits are placed is closed because giatake siya og mga mga NPA, so pwede ba ka makakolekta from PDIC? Pwede ba ka maka-claim sa insurance? Answer is no. So the PDIC only covers the risk of a bank closure ordered by the monetary board. So, diba, in ordinary insurance, let's say mo palit kag life insurance sa imong self or car insurance para sa imong car, di ba? Normally we pay an insurance premium, di ba? Every month magbayad ka or every year ba yun, or every quarter. So the next question is, since ang atong deposits are covered by an insurance, di ba? Care of PDIC, are we supposed to pay any insurance premium? Answer is no. Insurance premium is paid by the banks and not by the depositors. So us as depositors, we will not be the ones paying the insurance premium, but it is our banks who asa imong deposit. The bank is the one obliged to pay for the insurance premium. So they usually pay 1/5 of 1% per annum of the assessment fees. So that is also one of their expenses. No, that is one of the expense if you own a bank. This is one of your considerations for in your day-to-day operations na kailangan na kay masat aside na for this one, for the insurance premium. So how is insurance coverage determined? So in determining the insured amount, the outstanding balance of each account is adjusted such that interests are updated, withholding taxes are deducted. But you relate this to your tax if you already have a tax subject. Diba? Interest income from your deposit, you are taxed at 20% final tax. So i-minus na po dadaan withholding taxes. Accounts maintained by a depositor in the same right and capacity are added together. We already explained this a while ago. No, if you have several deposits in a specific bank, all your deposits will be added together in determining how much are you able to claim for your insurance coverage. And whenever applicable, unpaid loans and other obligations of the depositor are deducted. I have also explained this a while ago. If you have a bank loan, the amount outstanding will also be deducted first from your insured deposit. So, kumbaga, if you relate this to financial accounting, murag kag nag-compute o net asset or equity, no, where you have assets minus liabilities is equal to equity. So, kung sara ang habilin, sara ang net amount, that is what should be used in determining your insurance coverage. But again, not to exceed 500,000 per depositor. Mali. Okay, so Charo, no? Charo malipat pataan eh. Charo makalimot pa mo ani. These are the 4 excluded accounts. Meaning, kung excluded, walay lapot sa coverage. So, unsay pasabot? For example, if you have savings account, if you have checking account, and at the same time, you have investment products, you own investment products in the bank, dili na nimo siya i-appeal og add. Okay? So, dili nimo siya i-appeal o add para to get the total to determine your insurance coverage. So, ayaw dyan sila i-consider sa pag-add ninyo. Can PDIC insurance coverage be increased by having several accounts in the same name in an insured bank? Already obvious. So, what is your answer, B? Can PDIC insurance coverage be increased by having several accounts in the same name in an insured bank? Yeah, yes or no? Can this be increased? Okay, so correct. Correct in your answers. At least nasabtan ra, di ba? No. Deposit insurance coverage is not determined on a per account basis, but rather on sa gani nga basis atong gamit. Not determined on a per account, but rather correct on a per depositor basis. So bahala daghan pa kayo pa diba o ang tawag dito is splitting. Kung ang legal term ba, splitting of deposits. So if nag-split of deposits, so for example, we have 1 million jud nga kwarta, gi-split lang yung mga ulo, kay namutong by October 500,000. So 500,000 sa account 1, 500,000 sa account 2, but the same bank, dili gihapon ka maka-escape. Now, so only 500,000 yun ang claim. So we have a question here, attorney, for clarification. That's 500,000 per depositor in a bank po, right? So if the depositor has another account in another bank, he or she is still covered by the insurance. Yes, the 500,000 per depositor is per bank. So kana na bank. Kung lahat ng kalahi nga bank, so yung imuhang second account is naa sa lahi nga bank, lahi pud to nga 500,000. Okay, we cannot also expect man sa both banks to be close together. No, I mean, ipasira siya at the same time. So, sara dyan sa ato, ma-close. Okay, again, we go back to the fact that the PDIC will only cover those bank closures ordered by the monetary. Asa na ang monetary board? Ang monetary board kaysa BSP na siya. Okay, so if by order of the monetary board, okay, another question here. If below 500,000 ang imong money sa bank, pila naman lang imo insurance? Well, kung imong deposit is lower than 500,000, then ang actual deposit nimo, hayahay daw kung kaayo ka, no? Kung 10,000 or imong deposit, ang imong makuha 500,000. So, only the actual deposit, but as long as not to exceed 500,000. Okay? Okay. If I have deposits in several different insured banks, so my deposit be added together. Say, so dili mag-below sa balance, attorney. Kasi pasabot dili mag-below sa balance. Kung for example, no, ang imuhang deposit is 20,000 ra. So, hindi ma-close na siya nga bank. Kaning 20,000 ra jud makuha, but for example, if your deposit is 600,000, putobra 500 ang imong makuha. Ang katong 100 wala na jud siya. I mean, wala siya in a sense, dili siya i-cover sa PDIC. Okay, so we go back here. So again, I think we have addressed this, no? So na preempt. Okay. Of course, your minds are so creative, makahanahan different scenarios. So for this will my deposits be added together ba daw if I have deposits in several different insured banks? So the answer is no. Deposits in different banking institutions are insured separately. However, if a bank has one or more branches, the main office and all branch offices are considered as one bank. So this is also very understandable, no? Because in our study of the corporation code, diba, the main office and the branch offices are under the same one legal entity. So in this case, your deposit sa main office o sa branch will be added together. But if your deposit is with an entirely separate bank, that will not be added to your other deposits sa lahi nga bank. So for this purpose, main office and branch offices, you have deposits at the main office and at one or more branch offices of the same bank. The deposits are added together when determining deposit insurance coverage, the total of which shall not exceed 500,000. Okay, we have another question. How about Miss, those big depositors with millions on their accounts since 500,000 naman ilang makuha? What happens to their other money? Kauban ni ibayad sa bank sa uban depositors? Okay, so for those tagpo jud nga mga accounts, di ba? Remember, ngano ganing naghisgot na ta og PDIC because mag-close na ang bank, no, as ordered by the monetary board. Nya, mga tanong na sa nimo nganong kahang ipa-close sila sa based sa order ni monetary board? It's because the bank is already insolvent. Kasi pasabot sa insolvent, ang iyang liabilities mas dako na kaysa sa iyang assets. So ang katong kwarta, ang asset sa bank is not anymore enough to satisfy all liabilities sa bangko. So ang katong kwarta is ang habilin nga kwarta sa bangko mao na ilang gamiton sa pag-satisfy sa kanang creditors sa bangko. Na of course, prorita mo na sila, di ba? Ayun daw ba sa inyong credit transactions, particularly preference of credits, di ba? In the instance nga kuwang ang assets to satisfy all liabilities, the creditors will then be classified as nakalimut ko sa terminologies kung preferred ba siya mga creditor or dili siya preferred na creditor. So if dili siya preferred na creditor, then i-add na ilang liabilities at then i-prorata. So mao na in a sense mao ang habilin nga kwarta sa bangko igamit to na nila sa pagbayad sa ilang outstanding liabilities. So mo to dili jud ka makakuha sa full jud nimo kung lapas 500,000. But if you really want to make sure, for example, if ang imong insured dira ay ang imong deposit dira is say 20 million, and then lagi ko to 500,000 in insurance. So your remedy there is to get an insurance from a private insurer to insure your deposits. Kaya ang i-insure naman ni PDIC is kutobrang 500,000. So mag-fuck in insurance. So this time you will be the one to pay the insurance premiums. Ana siya. Okay, so I hope that clears up that question. Okay. Is there a need for a depositor to file his claim for insured deposit with PDIC? The answer is yes. Depositors will be advised through the national and or local media and posters at the premises of the closed insured bank and other public places within the locality on the schedule of distribution of claim forms by PDIC, receiving of claim forms by PDIC, and the prescriptive date of filing claims by the depositors. So dili pwede nga hawaton ka forever mga barag tinapulan ka, let's say nakadungog ka sa news nga na-close di ay ang bangko nga imuhang gidepositohan. So actually you will be informed of the procedure kung unsa imong kailangan buhaton, asa ka moadto, kano sa ka moadto. Na prescriptive date. So meaning ang prescriptive date is like a deadline. Diri ana ra nga date kutob if dugay-dugay ka, then you cannot claim anymore your insured deposit. Like I have a first-hand experience now. My father actually opened a deposit on behalf of my minor sister. So katong pagbata pag yun na niya, so marag hinahinayan mag-deposit pa kung may mga extra kwarto. Kadang diha dito sa Cebu ni Rural Bank of something, nakalimot ko sa ini, basta Rural Bank siya, a very small bank. And then just recently, the bank closed. Okay, and then na-worry na to sila sa daw ilang kwarta. But again, wala man kaabot 500,000 anyway. Kaabot 500,000. But then they were actually informed. Gitaksan, tawagan man siguro to get. Basta gi-inform sila how to claim. So representatives from the PDIC actually went to station to Naslimer kuan dito. Nihangyo sila sa Talisay City Hall. Dito sila mag-distribute sa kwarta. So motto, we just followed the procedure and then we were able to get the balance, the full balance of the deposit amount. Okay, we have another question. Miss, abi na ko per depositor or tao ang basis sa insurance coverage. Unsa di ay pasabot aning deposits in different banking institutions or insured separately. Ang pasabot sa per depositor is kung depositor ka sa kana nga bangko. Okay? So, depositor ka ana nga bangko. If you have daghan nga accounts sa the same nga bangko, you are considered as one depositor, di ba? So, i-add tanan. However, kung depositor ka sa lahi nga bangko, lahi sad ang imong coverage dito. Okay? So, kung i-kompleto na to siya, per depositor per bank, ano na lang, para di mo maglibog. So, per depositor per bank. Okay? Kung lahi siya nga bank, mo start na po ka mo grip na kay fresh na 500,000 na po. So, kung ay lesson learned, kung pwede, mas, if ganahan ka nga, ma-protected yun imong kwarta, don't put all your eggs in one basket no more dinana ba. Kung daghan ka kwarta, spread out mo dili lang in one bank because pero kaning giingon na to per depositor is per depositor per bank. So if you have several accounts sa isa ka bank, i-add siya tanan. But dili i-appeal ang katong accounts nga lahi naa sa lahi nga bangko. Okay? Kaya again, ang imong tan-awon ani is closure sa bank. So for example, if you have a deposit in bank A and then you also have a deposit in bank B and then only bank A is closed. So ang imong claim sa insurance is sa katurang na close nga bank. Katurang nga 500,000 i-determine. Okay? Okay. When should the depositor of a closed insured bank file his claim with PDIC? The depositor of a closed insured bank has 24 months from the date of bank takeover to file his deposit insurance claim. So this is what we refer to as your prescriptive period. What happens when the depositor of a closed bank fails to file his claim within the 24-month period? All rights of the depositor with respect to the insured deposit shall no longer be honored, but he may still make a claim against the assets of the closed bank. So remember here, there are actually two entities involved, no? PDIC and the bank itself. So if you cannot claim anymore, kaya sa PDIC is 24 months from ang prescriptive period, you can still claim from the closed bank. But again, there is a low chance that you will be paid, but you can still try, no? If nakalimot ka no nalapas na 24 months mo ang claim sa imong insured deposit from the PDIC, then you may make a claim against the bank. And then for this purpose, if we relate this to the civil code, you have actually 10 years siguro. Okay, this is based on a written contract man. Bali ang imong deposit sa bangko, di ba? Naman mo gipirmahan ang pag-deposit nimo, pag-create nimo rather sa imong deposit account. So this is based on a contract. So 10 years based sa civil code na. So if you want to enforce your right over a written contract, you have 10 years. So you have 10 years to go against or to file a claim against the closed bank. But then again, since it is already closed, make sure that you file your claim while the closed bank is still under liquidation. Wa pa nahuman yung liquidation pa kay kung nahuman na gyud fully ang iyang liquidation, di ba? Unsa to sa ato ang na-learn ko sa partnership na after winding up, there is now the death of the entity. So after na winding up, after nag-liquidation, if diha pa ka ni files in claim within 10 years pa bitaw, wala ra gihapon kay no? But then again, if you go against the assets of a closed bank, you have no guarantee na you will be able to get the full amount. How long does it take PDIC to settle a claim for insured deposit? PDIC aims to pay valid claims as soon as possible. Prior to payout, claims are examined thoroughly. This is to protect the deposit insurance fund, which is the source of insurance payments. Sometimes depositors mistakenly assume that the payouts are sourced from their deposits. This is not the case. Okay, the payouts are from the PDIC's own funds. So once you file your claim for your insured deposit, they should be settled within 6 months from the date of filing, provided all requirements are met, but the claim must be filed within the 24 months after bank takeover. So, kaning 6 months is for the settlement. Pasabot ano, tagaan mo 6 months si PDIC to pay you. So 6 months from the date of the filing, from the date nga ni file kasi imong claim. But ang imong date of filing must be within 24 months after the bank takeover. The 6-month period shall not apply if the documents of the claimant are incomplete or if the validity of the claim requires the resolution of issues of tax and law by another office, whether your agency independently or in coordination with PDIC. So if your deposit is in dispute, kanang medyo complicated o naidaghan issues sa imong deposits, then it may take longer than 6 months for your claim to be settled. But if kuan lang, normal circumstances, no walay mga questions about sa imong deposit, then your claim will be settled as soon as possible. Like in our case, we were able to claim the settlement on that same day nga nag-file ni sa among claim. So what processes are involved before PDIC starts servicing claims? Deposit records are subjected to the examination prior to the start of servicing or settlement of claims. So of course, PDIC will still investigate or examine the records of the banks so they could make an initial assessment as to how much each depositor is entitled to. Diba? So the claims are evaluated and processed according to PDIC's standard procedures. How long does the pre-settlement examination take? The length of time needed for the examination of deposit liabilities of a closed insured bank largely depends on the completeness and accuracy of records turned over by the bank to PDIC and the number of deposit accounts to be examined. So there is no specific rule or specific number of days or months for the PDIC to examine first the deposit accounts. Okay, so it will depend on the complexity or the volume of the transactions put sa bank. If the deposit account in a closed bank is more than 500,000, what happens to the excess? The claim for the uninsured portion is a claim against the assets of a closed bank. So katong dili mo ma-claim sa PDIC, pwede nimo siya i-claim against the assets of a closed bank. Then again, I want to emphasize no, this is also not a guarantee nga makakuha jud because again, closed naman ang bank, insolvent naman ang bank, so wala na siya enough money to satisfy all claims. The claim may be filed with a liquidator of the closed bank within 60 days from the publication of the notice of closure. However, payment of said claim will depend on the payment of the said claim will depend on the bank's available assets and approval of the liquidation form. So again, you have a right to file a claim against the assets of the bank, but then again, you will not, there is no guarantee that you will be paid for such claim. Okay, so that's it for PDIC. I hope you were able to catch all the important provisions. Anyway, only one question will be asked for PDIC. So, katurang mga very important aspects sa ato ang PDIC. Okay? And then we will proceed now to the law on the secrecy of bank deposits. So the legal basis for the law on secrecy of bank deposits is RA 1405 as amended. We will be talking about the purpose of the law on secrecy, the deposits covered, prohibited acts, exceptions, and merge. Okay, section 1. Sorry, you may ignore that one. Formatting. Let's focus on the substance. Okay. Okay, based on Section 1 of such law, the purpose is laid out. It is hereby declared to be the policy of the government to give encouragement to the people to deposit their money in banking institutions and to discourage private hoarding so that the same may be properly utilized by banks in authorized loans to assist in the economic development of the country. So, meron siya o ganang complementary actually with the PDIC, diba? In PDIC, we learned that the government wants us to put trust and confidence nga ma-protected ra jud atong deposits. And in this law on secrecy of bank deposits, gina-encourage, it will give us encouragement though to put our money in the bank instead of privately hoarding them. Unsay pasabot ani private hoarding? Sabot ana kay ikaw ra ba ang mag-save sa imong kwarta diha so karon nimo sa imong baol or na kay secret safe diha sa inyong balay, no? One of my friends who is very rich, he said na he doesn't deposit his money down to the bank. Chinese man siya, skeptical kayo siya, wala siya trust sa bank. So ang iyang kwarta iyang ibutang ilalom sa tiles sa iyang wala natigamit nga CR. Boy, gisultian lagi ko nimo. Anyway, di mo ko magawat ana pero ingon siya ingon kwarta na ara dis ilaw sa tiles. Di sa di mo hand pero anyway, mao na siya ang pina-discourage sa government. No, we are discouraged to do private hoarding. And instead, we are encouraged to put our money in the banking institutions so that daw the kwarta no will be properly utilized or used by the bank. Anyway, kaning bank magud kay medyo kuan po kay sila no nang ato ang kwarta nga gi-deposit dito ilaharaman pud ng katuyokon. We are only given a very minimal amount of interest, and then ang atong kwarta gigamit nila para ipahuwam sa ubang tao, and then they are earning very high interest rates. Okay, pero ingon man si government daw this is done to assist in the economic development of the country. Okay, sige na lang. Agree na lang ta. Okay, deposits covered. All deposits according to Section 2 of such law says that all deposits of whatever nature with banks or banking institutions in the Philippines, including investment in bonds, issued by the government of the Philippines, its political subdivisions, and its instrumentalities. These are absolute confidential. So, ang kasabot aning deposits covered, lahi siya dito sa PDIC. No? Kaya ang deposits covered sa PDIC, kasabot ato, na ay insurance. But there is law on secrecy, meaning, if your deposits covered, meaning, dapat these deposits are to be made secret or confidential. For example, na ay nangutang nimo, utang nimo let's say 50,000. Unya sige siya sulti nga, friend, pamadyo ko kwarta nga ikapayad friend uy. Unya nagduda jud ka nga naa siya daghan kwarta naa sa bangko niya. Pwede ba ka manawag sa bangko? Maingon ka nga, pwede ko makahibaw pilay balance sa ako ang friend din ha. Kay di mo gud siya mobayad sa utang kay mo siya kwarta pero feel jud ako daghan kay na siya deposit tira. Pwede ba na i-disclose sa bangko? Okay. So answer kay namin answer diri no. No, correct, because this is covered by the the law on secrecy of bank deposits. So the employees sa bangko dili sila pwedeng mukuan sani mo disclose ang ila ra dapat tubagon kay depositor jud mismo kung tan siya pila ganito kung balance din ha. Okay, that's the time that they could disclose it. Anyway, nakatawa ako because I remembered something personal experience ko. I actually violated this one. Nag-violate ko ani secrecy of bank deposits because okay, a little ano lang ba, sharing. I have a client, overseas client. Kunya, he wants to deposit the money to me. Naman siya pero nun ako. So at that time, yung magod siya nga, basta di na lang na po ko so, basta kay eventually hangyo ko sa ako ang cousin na kung pwede sa iyang bangko lang sana ko ipa-deposit ang kwarta. And she agreed. Okay, she agreed. That was more than 100,000. Okay. So na-agree siya. Kunya, nisulti man akong cousin na hold daw ang kwarta sa bangko. Siya na hold ko no. Kasi daghan siya mga reasons. Kaya na ako naman siya paningil. Kung asa na itong kwarta, oy, yung siya na hold ko no. Nakalitawag ko ng bank niya something. Yeah, yun siya, give it 1 week daw. I-investigate daw sa bank. Okay, sige, wala, said ko. And then a week turned into 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month. Wala ramang gihapon. Ano siya? Inday, wala paghihapon na-release sa bangko. Naka-hold you daw under investigation pa. So, of course, I know, but I have a basic understanding of banking procedures. And then I said, na, they cannot, they cannot freeze the account because later, hisgotan ay discuss na to sa AMLA. We will learn that the only person that could order of freezing sa imong account is the Court of Appeals. So, kung nagduda na dyan ko, so what I did was, very funny, ayaw ko rin yung sandahan. Pero I impersonated my cousin. Kaya I know man, if mangutana ko sa bangko, kung available na ba or na-credit ba ang kwarta dito, available na ba siya for withdrawal, dili man sila matubag na ko. Kaya of course, covered man sila sa law on secrecy of bank deposits. So what I did was, I called the bank, and then I impersonated my cousin. And then, of course, as a security measure sa bangko, they would ask security questions. As in, nagkorupted ko while holding the phone. They asked security questions. What is your full name? And then, what is the maiden name of your mother? What is your contact number? What is your address? So on and so forth. But the question, what's your email address? Something. Tanan, korupted ko. And then I was able, kaya ako man siyang ginotdaan ko, siguro niya basic questions. Akong ginotdaan, dilista na ako daan ang answers. May ganit kay baw ko tanan. So, okay, na-verify na ko na niya. Then, because my intention is really, I want to know if napaba akong kwarta dito. Bahalag na freeze, bahalag dito na akong withdraw. Basta kay sure kung ano pa akong kwarta. To my dismay, no, ni Ana bank personnel, yun siya na 100 pesos siya daw ang suot sa kwarta. I mean, ang suot nga kwarta sa bank. So that means gigamit tayo sa kung igagawa kong kwarta. Mata siya ang tragedy. Pero, yeah, muna to siya akong personal experience sa violation of the law on secrecy of bank deposits. Anyway, ayaw ko rin yung sanda. Muna to siya, okay? So, as a rule, this is really absolutely confidential. The following are liable under this law. Any person or government official or any government bureau or office that examines, inquires, or looks into a bank deposit or government bond investment in any of the instances not allowed in Section 2. So as a rule, as a general rule, the deposits are confidential, meaning secret jud siya. Dili pwede makapangutan na si bisan kinsa. kung pila ang amount nila deposit. Pero na exemptions later on we will learn. Unsa nga mga instances ang mo-allow sila mamatan-aw sa bank deposit. So also liable here is any official or employee of a banking institution who makes a disclosure concerning bank deposits to another in any instance not allowed by law. So mahug nga ang katong bank staff ni nisulti sa ako abang na pila ang balance. He or she is liable, but again na sa justification na she thought no in good faith she is disclosing it to the depositor should. Anyway, so mo na siya. So if you become bank employee something, dili ninyo pwede no naman mo access sa system no so makitan jud ninyo pila balance ni kuan ana. Di na ninyo pwede i-chika sa lain or else you will be liable under this law. Okay? So are there any, so as a general rule have, the deposits are absolutely confidential, but are there any instances when confidentiality of bank deposits is not absolute? So we have exemptions. So under section 2, of course, of the law provides that bank deposits and government bank investments may be examined, inquired, and looked into in the following instances. First, for what? Okay. When the examination is made in the course of a special or general exam, for what? Okay, I have a question here for AMLA. Are we going to discuss only covered persons since maorang contents of file send? No. Ang kato di ba naman separate ng word file nga akong gisend sa katong covered persons, that is only supplementary. Na ako diri sa kaning main file check akong gisend na 122 pages. Apil na dito ang AMLA. Okay? So dili ra covered persons at istoryaan sa AMLA. Katong covered persons nga naa sa separate file, gilahi ra to nako sila kay naglisod kong edit sa kuan sa PowerPoint. Anyway, sige, going back. So when the examination is made, the independent auditor hired by the bank to conduct its regular audit, written permission of the depositor in cases of impeachment upon competent order of the court, and when it is the subject matter of the litigation. But that is before the amendment of the law. But after amendment, we have these following requirements before someone could look into the deposits. Upon written permission or consent in writing by the depositor. So someone else can inquire into the balance or inquire into the deposits if there is a written permission or consent in writing by the depositor. So for consent to be valid, it should be made knowingly, voluntarily, and with sufficient awareness of the relevant circumstances and likely consequences. So if you are to get a consent, it must be in writing. So dili pwede orally. Tando ra siya verbally. Yes, sige pwede ra. It must be in writing. And then in cases of impeachment, so the grounds for impeachment and the persons that are covered by impeachment are laid out in Article 11, Section 2 of your 1987 Constitution. And the impeachable officers are only the following: the President, the Vice President, the members of the Supreme Court, the members of the Constitutional Commission, and the Ombudsman. So if for other government officers, they are not considered as impeachable officers, but these are the only impeachable officers. And then the grounds for impeachment are for culpable violation of the Constitution, treason, bribery, graft, and corruption, and other high crimes or betrayal of public trust. So in these cases, for example, let's say the president is the process of being impeached. Okay, because there is a pending impeachment case against any of these impeachable officers, then kinsa may in charge aning impeachment, di ba? Magsugod man siya sa House of Representatives and then masaka dito sa Congress. So Congress can look into the deposit accounts of these impeachable officers if there is an ongoing impeachment trial. So that is also one of the exceptions to the secrecy of the bank deposits. Attorney, what amendment po is being referred to here in before and after? Amendment of the law. So katong original na law and secrecy, not siya ang before, and then this one is after. So we focus on the after. Okay. So first again is when there is a written consent, and second in cases of impeachment. And then upon order of a competent court for bribery and dereliction of duty of public officials. So for bribery and dereliction of duty, when we say competent court, court that has jurisdiction, so it could be your trial court or your sandigan bayan, depending on the officer being charged. But if, for example, you are a government officer and then you are being charged with bribery, kay, let's say kuan ka taga BIR ka, i-filean ka bribery kay di kag panawat under the table. So and then to prove pud no nga you have a huge balance sa imong bank account when in fact ang imong sweldo ra untas BIR is, let's say, 30,000 per month, and then they want to prove nga na-adjud kay bribery na hitabo because ang imong bank account is naabot na siya 10 million. So how come nga 30,000 ra imong sweldo every month maka-accumulate kag millions? So to prove that, they want to look into your bank deposits, and again, we should respect the law and secrecy. You should get first an order from the court. Okay. In cases where the money deposited or invested is the subject matter of the litigation. So the money deposited should be the very thing in dispute. Dili siya pwede incidentally lang. Dapat maugid siya ang in dispute. So are those that we have mentioned for? So are the exceptions listed in the law exclusive? No, answer is no, because katong upat nga akong dimension, that those are the exceptions laid out by the law and bank secrecy itself. But there are also other exceptions that could not be found lang sa law and secrecy, but naapod siya sa other laws. So example, under the Ombudsman Act, this is another law, no? Bank deposits and investments may be examined, inquired, or looked into as provided for under other laws in the following instances. The Ombudsman has the power to issue subpoena and subpoena ducis tecum, take testimony in any investigation or inquiry, as well as examine and access bank accounts and records. So since kay Ombudsman man we are actually talking about those complaints filed against public officials. So the Ombudsman can look into your bank accounts. So under the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, we also have this exclusion from the coverage of the law and secrecy of bank deposits. So bank deposits of public official, his spouse, and unmarried children may be taken into consideration in the enforcement of the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. So in this case, if you are a public official and then you are being charged with graft and corruption, not only your bank deposits di ay ang pwede tan-awon, but also pwede po tan-awon ang bank deposits of spouse and unmarried children. Okay, another for a while. Mag-sneeze sa ako. Ayun. Okay, under the new Central Bank Act, directors, officers, stockholders, and related interests contract a loan or any form of financial accommodation with their bank or related bank are required to execute a written waiver of secrecy or of deposits pursuant to the new Central Bank Act. So, mo ano yung gitawag na glossary. Diba ninyo nga ka, if you become CPAs, someday, actually, wa mo ko siya gi-emphasize sa una pag undergrad ako. So, when I became an external auditor, working in an audit firm, one of our clients is a bank, and I was tasked to audit the bank. And then we have this glossary. Ano sa din ang glossary? Directors, officers, stockholders, related interest. Mo na ang glossary. So, kani siyang si glossary. For example, director ka sa bank A. And then, mangutang ka, bank loan ka sa bank A mismo. Since you are part of glossary, you are required to execute a written waiver of secrecy of deposits. Okay? So if you are a glossary and you want to loan from the bank to where you are a glossary, then you need to execute a waiver. So therefore, the bank could look into your deposits. Okay, deposits. This is very important because as auditors would move on. Ang kanimang kung if you are to audit a bank, tanaw ni mo ang glossary nila, and then you have to make a certain disclosure in your notes to financial statements related to those three loans. And then also under NIRC or National Internal Revenue Code, or in short tax code, we also have these exemptions to the secrecy. So the CIR, or the Commissioner of Internal Revenue, is authorized to inquire into bank deposit accounts in relation to an application for compromise of tax liability. For number one, compromise of tax liability, meaning nakaiutang sa BIR, mga tax, let's say 500,000, and then you ask for a compromise on the ground of financial incapacity. Kung may BIR, willing man to provide an tax no 500,000, but it's just that I am financially incapable. So ang imong giingon nga ground is financial incapacity. Ingat ka, hangyo ka. Pwede 300,000 lang akong bayaran aning tax, no? May pag-compromise. So since your ground for asking of a compromise is financial incapacity, how will the BIR know that you are really financially incapacitated? So you need to grant an authority sa CIR, Commissioner of Internal Revenue, to look into your bank deposit to make sure that you are really financially incapable. Okay, so first na compromise. Without this, if you will not execute a written consent authorizing the CIR to inquire into your bank deposits, your application for compromise based on the ground of financial incapacity will be denied. Ano di man ka magpatanaw, that means na di kay millions dito, nangayo kag compromise. So dili na i-grant. Determination of a decedent's gross estate. If na ay namatay, no? If na ay namatay, the net estate of the decedent will be subjected to estate tax. And then to determine net estate, you have to compute first gross estate. So ang gross estate meaning tibuok assets sa namatay, ibang itotal, including the deposits niya sa bangko. So how are we able to know pila tong i-add wa ta kahibaw sa balance sa ilang deposit? So that's why the Commissioner of Internal Revenue, in the process of computing for the estate tax, will be given an authority to look into the bank deposit of the decedent, sa katong namatay. Then a request for tax information of specific taxpayers made by a foreign tax authority pursuant to a tax treaty. So for example, you also have a tax liability sa foreign countries, and then that country has a tax treaty with the Philippines authorizing that foreign country to request for a tax information pwede sada siya gamitin as a ground to inquire into the bank deposits as one of the exceptions as well to the secrecy. And then under AMLA, the AMLC or the Anti-Money Laundering Council may be authorized to examine and inquire into bank deposits or investment with banks or non-bank financial institutions with, okay, so there are instances na kailangan og court order, na po instances na dili kailangan og court order. So in certain predicate crimes, so there are specific crime nga if kana gani ang di-allege sa imo ha, pwede rin wala court order. So even without court order, the AMLC could look into your bank deposits. But all others, if wala ka ni fall of certain predicate crime, then you need a court order. The AMLC should get a court order first before they could inquire into the bank deposits. What are the predicate crimes? Later we will learn, but I think when I reviewed for the bar, I have a certain mnemonic for that. Actually, when we reach AMLA sa discussion na to, you will see that there are actually 36 crimes, 36 predicate crimes under AMLA. But out of the 36, na ay mga 6 ra kabuok crimes ang dili kailangan og court order before the AMLC could look into the bank deposits. Off the top of my head, no, I think nadiray kidnapping, arson, we have murder. I think also drugs is included. So naaray katong later ato siguro what I think na-appeal ako sa slides there. But there are only 6, I think. Ang ako ang mnemonic ko na to is K-charm. So, K-charm. So charm is so 5, that must be 6. So there are only 6 certain predicate crimes that need no court order na. But all others, again, as mentioned, there are 36 predicate crimes sa AMLA. So out of 36, only 6 ang dili kailangan ng court order before EMLC could inquire into bank deposits, while for the remaining 30 nga predicate crimes, they need a court order. Unya na lang iniabot na to into sa AMLA na discussion. And then the Bangko Sentral or BSP is also authorized to inquire into or examine bank deposits or investments in the course of a periodic or special examination to ensure compliance with the AMLA in accordance with the rule of examination of the BSP. And conduct annual testing, which is limited to the determination of the existence and true identity of the owners of numbered accounts. Anyway, remember the BSP is the regulator of banks. So therefore, for it to exercise its powers to regulate banks, incidentally, they should be able to look into the deposit accounts. Okay, how can they regulate something they do not know about? So they should also have that limited power to inquire into the bank deposits. So also we learned in PDIC law, PDIC is treated as a co-regulator of BSP. So therefore, PDIC has a limited power to inquire into bank deposits, but for the purpose only of finding unsafe or unsound banking practices. The CA or the Court of Appeals designated as a special court may issue an order authorizing law enforcement officers to examine and gather information of the deposits, placements, trust accounts, assets, and records in a bank or financial institution in connection with anti-terrorism case. So this is provided by our Human Security Act. So if a certain person is suspected to be a terrorist, the Court of Appeals may issue an order authorizing our police officers to look into the deposit accounts of such suspected person. Unsaon na lang tong case sa Marcos, gi-check na to si BI. Na, actually, nahuman naman to, di ba? Na naman to sila gi-determine nga net estate o estate tax. So that means, nahuman na sa una ang pag-inquire nila sa bank deposits. Na-appeal na to sa determination, punuhan. But as to the, of course, wala magiging tayo personal knowledge of what really happened. So we just follow what is written in the rules of evidence. With, under the rules of evidence, one of the rebuttable presumptions under the rules of evidence is that all acts of government officials are presumed to be made in the regular course. Wala kay evidence to the contrary, the act of a government official is considered to be correct. So if you want to dispute, you need to prove, you need to present convincing evidence. Anyway, let's not go into that. Kay medyo hot-ish hot. So, ako kay apolitical man po. Sorry kayo for those who are politically inclined. No, but ako kay, I don't know, I can't force myself to care. Maybe I have lots of problems to deal with. Kana lang sa personal ako ang agree. Okay, and then under the Constitution, the Commission on Audit has also a limited right to inquire into deposits, particularly the deposit accounts of the government agencies. Diba? Kaning mga government agencies, they are subject to the audit of COA. And then during the course of COA's audit, kailangan po siya makibaw sa bank deposits sa government institutions being subjected to the audit. The PCGG, the Presidential Commission on Good Government, in the conduct of its investigations to recover ill-gotten wealth. To answer your question, the PCGG actually has an authority to inquire into the bank deposits to recover the ill-gotten wealth accumulated by Marcos. So is that all? Let's have a recap. So this one, the exceptions to the secrecy are being expanded as well by jurisprudence. When we say jurisprudence, pasabot ana court decisions, Supreme Court decisions interpreting other exceptions. Like remember, diba, one of the exceptions is when you are being charged with bribery, no, under reliction of duty. Supreme Court said plunder is analogous to bribery, such that if you are being charged with plunder, then incidentally the court can inquire into your bank deposits. Cases of unexplained wealth are also similar to the cases of bribery or dereliction of duty, such that if you are being suspected of accumulating unexplained wealth, then the proper authority can look into your bank deposits. So are the rules and exceptions discussed so far applicable to both peso deposits and foreign deposits? No, because diba, we learned sa PDIC, even if you have a foreign deposit, the foreign deposits are covered by PDIC, but how about for the secrecy of bank deposits? Are your foreign deposits and peso deposits the same with respect to the law on the secrecy of bank deposits? So the foreign currency deposit are actually governed by the Foreign Currency Deposit Act, which is under RA 6426. So just very briefly, let's describe what are foreign currency deposits. So these refer to funds in foreign currencies which are accepted and held by authorized banks in the regular course of business with the obligation to return an equivalent amount to the owner thereof with or without interest. Like for example, if you have dollars, if you have an APAM, sending you money in dollars, so you thought it would be best for you to open a deposit savings, a dollar savings account, then that is considered as a foreign currency deposit account. For a while, give me 2 to 3 minutes. Nasa po. bottle edit lang. Okay. So it is actually prohibited for a person or a government official to examine or inquire or look into a foreign currency deposit without the written permission of the depositor. It's also a prohibited act. You are an official or employee of a banking institution to make a disclosure concerning the foreign currency deposit to another. So, meaning to say, the foreign deposits, are much more protected as foreign currency deposits rather are much more protected as compared to peso deposits. You notice for the peso deposits, we have several exceptions. But for foreign currency deposits, we really need the written permission of the depositor. Okay, mas strict siya. So, muna, actually, more ni loophole, no? And then, considering for the persons who made the law, our legislators, everyone siguro, or most of them siguro, if not all, no, are guilty of somehow graft and corruption. And then to escape the original law on the secrecy of bank deposits, they perhaps created this so that they could deposit their money in a foreign currency deposit and then protect that from inquiry. No, because here for foreign currency deposits, no one can actually look into that if that person has no written permission of the depositor. How about garnishment of bank deposits? The garnishment of bank deposit does not violate the law. What do we mean by garnishment? Pasabot anang garnishment kay someone sued you, bikiha ka for a collection of sum of money, and then napildi ka, pero wa man kay kortaonhan. So ang gibuhat sa nakadaog, gipa-garnish niya ang inyong bank deposit. So ang question kay there's actually a case na kanisya ni allege ang katong napildi na kanang tingnan siya nga dili mi mosugot na ipa-garnish. Kay if i-garnish, that means makahibaw ka sa details sa bank deposit which is prohibited, diba, from our law on bank secrecy. But ingon si Supreme Court, the prohibition against examination does not preclude its being garnished for satisfaction of judgment. The disclosure is purely incidental to the execution process, and it was not the intention of the legislature to place bank deposits beyond the reach of a judgment creditor. So ang gi-prohibit lang po is for you to inquire. But this one is wala man siya nag-inquire actually. Kaya nakadaog man siya, ira ipa-garnish. Masabot ipa-garnish, ipakuha ra. So mura gi technical nila ba nga, wala man mi nangutana no kung pilay balance. It's just that gikuha lang namo to satisfy the judgment. So lusot gihapon. This is not a violation of the secrecy of the bank deposits. And then it is also emphasized that foreign currency deposits shall be exempt from attachment, garnishment, or any other order of any court, legislative body, agency, or any administrative body whatsoever. So very, very protected, you know, foreign currency deposits. Aside from it, cannot be looked into without the written consent of the depositor. At the same time, foreign currency deposits cannot be subjected to attachment or garnishment. So, dili pwede makuha if napildi ka sa isa ka case, collection case, dili gihapon pwede makuha imong foreign currency deposits. Ang pwede makuha is ang imong peso deposits. Okay, let's skip this na lang kay para di mo maglibot. Okay, so basically okay, again, I will only ask one question naman sa secrecy. Ang inyong haratimanan is general rule and the exceptions. You need to know whether a particular scenario is one of the exceptions. So if it is one of the exceptions, that means pwede siya mo inquire, mo look into the bank deposits even without the consent of the depositor. So again, as a general rule, dapat na ay written consent or katong court order. Dapat na ay written consent. Exception, if katong na mga court orders, if katong mga gipang-mention na to ganina nga mga special laws. Okay? Sige. Give me another 1 minute, please. Katol siya ako to. Sorry tayo. Okay, let's proceed to the Truth in Lending Act. So from the name of the law itself, it is very much easy to understand the purpose. Here is truth in lending, meaning the law aims to promote honesty in the conduct of any lending transactions. So if magpautang ka, dapat musulti ka sa tinuod. Kung sa man nga tinuod ang pasabot, musulti ka sa tinuod kay interest, musulti ka sa tinuod nga mga charges nga imong i-impose sa nangutang. Okay? So kaning Truth in Lending Act is actually provides an obligation on the part of the lender to be truthful sa ihang borrower. So kung sa perspective ni buyer, ni borrower, si borrower na ay right to ask from the lender the truth of the truth, meaning pila iyang kinahanglan bayaran nga interest, how is this interest computed, what are the service charges, what are the finance charges, no? So mo ni siya ang purpose of Truth in Lending Act under RA 375. This is an act or law to require the disclosure of finance charges in connection with the extensions of credit. Sabot anong extensions of credit? Maghatag ka o magpautang ka. Sabot ana, i-extend imong gihatag, i-extend imong hand to lend money to another person. This law is approved on June 22, 1963. So these are the very important sections of the Truth in Lending Act. Section 1 gives you the title. Section 2 lays out the policy of the law. Section 3 defines technical terms. Section 4 gives you the information, the board, the penalties, and the effectivity of that. Okay, so we already know the title of the law, no? Truth in Lending Act. The policy behind this is to protect the people from a lack of awareness of the true cost of credit to the user by assuring a full disclosure of such cost with a view of preventing the uninformed use of credit to the detriment of the national economy. So meaning the borrower must know beforehand, before ma-complete ang iyang borrowing transaction, dapat hibaw si borrower kung pila jud yang payronon, unsay mga charges all. Okay? Sa una manggod, utang kay utang ra, and then ma-shock na lang sila nga mao na din ilang bayronon. So at least at the first instance, hibaw na sila, tagaan sila og lista or computation na nag-explain sa ilahang nga mauni ang mga charges related sa imong utang, nga kung mangutang ka na mo at this specific amount. So again, the purpose is to inform and protect the borrowing public. So who are covered under the Truth in Lending Act? This law covers any creditor or lender. No? Ang creditor mo ay nagpautang, or we can also refer to this person as the lender, who requires as an incident to the extension of credit the payment of a finance charge. So if ikaw creditor ka or lender ka, and then mag-impose ka of finance charge as an incident to the extension of credit, you are covered by the Truth in Lending Act. Okay. However, if you are a creditor and then you will not impose any finance charges, then you will not be covered under this act. So we already know what is a creditor. This is any person engaged in the business of extending credit, including any person who, as a regular business practice, makes loans or sells or rents property or services on a timed credit or installment basis, either as a principal or as an agent. What do we mean by credit? This is any loan, mortgage, deed of trust, advance or discount, any conditional sales contract, any contract to sell for sale or contract of sale of property or services, either for present or future delivery, under which part or all of the price is payable subsequent to the making of such a sale or contract. Attorney, does finance charge include interest? I say yes. Yes. Later ato makitaan ha na ko gibut under the example of what is this disclosure, what does this disclosure looks like. Any rental also covered under the definition of credit is any rental purchase contract, any contract or arrangement for the hire, bailment, or leasing of property, any upon demand, lien, pledge, or other claim against or for the delivery of property or money, any purchase or other acquisition of, or any credit upon the security of, any obligation of claim arising out of any of the foregoing. Any transaction or series of transactions having a similar purpose or effect. So basically, based on the definition of credit, it is something that you owe, no? It's something that you enter into a contract, but then you are not obligated to pay it right then and there. Okay, so that's credit. Finance charge. A finance charge includes interest, fees, service charges, discount, and such other charges incident to the extension of credit that may be prescribed by the Monetary Board of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas through the BSP regulations. So finance charge is a general term. This includes interest or any other charges that are being imposed because of the mere fact that you are extending a credit. Okay. So for example, nagpahuwam ra ka sa imong friend without any other charges, makainamikura, you are not covered by the Truth in Lending Act because in that case, you did not impose any finance charge. So what is then the obligation of the creditor or the lender under this law? The creditor is obliged to provide a clear statement in writing. This is what we call a full disclosure statement and to be furnished to each person whom credit is extended prior to the consummation of the transaction. So this is what I said a while ago. No, dapat ang disclosure is made before ma-complete ang transaction. Okay, before meeting of the minds, before ma-perfect ang contract of, before there is perfection sa contract of loan, dapat matagaan sa nimo og FPS si borrower para makahibaw siya untay ang mga payroll. So there should be, dili pwede na subsequent, no? Di pwede nga, pwede to follow na lang. Dili pwede. So dapat right before June mapirma baron si borrower sa contract of loan or even without even without physical document na magpirma mo. Basta prior to the consummation of the transaction, if you are the lender or the creditor, you should provide your borrower clear statement in writing. Dili pwede sad na explain ra nimo verbally or orally. Mingon ka nga, ang kuan di ay meron na interest mo ni. Because you also have to relate this to your law on credit transactions, no? Na an interest to be payable must be in writing. So any interest that is not in writing is void. Okay, so what should be disclosed? You disclose the cash price or delivered price. If, for example, you bought something and then instead of paying cash, imo siyang giutang. So, utang po dara cash price or the delivered price, the amount of down payment and or trade-in, if any, the difference between the amount. So the cash price minus down payment is equal to one difference. Then plus individually itemized charges, yeah, equals your total amount to be financed. A finance charge must be presented in monetary values, no peso and centavos. The percentage that the finance bears to the total amount to be financed expressed as simple annual rate and the outstanding unpaid balance of the obligation. So what should be kung di ba here worship formula, di ba? Cash price minus down payment is equal to then plus itemized charges is equal to total amount. So itemized charges, diha man mo yung finance charges. No, so ang finance charges nimo must also be expressed in monetary amounts para makuha nimo ang total. Dili ang imong ibutang diri is percentage. How are you able to compute the total? So dapat naa right? Actual jud nga monetary values, and then you can maybe disclose put sa kilid ana niya kung gyud sa nimo siya pag-compute, then imo siya ibutang dito bilang interest rate. So here, and then this is a snippet of the PPI website, and since PPI bank man siya, di ba? So now mag-extend po siya ang loans. So it actually places in its website its obligation to comply with the Truth in Lending Act. Okay, so here. And then so within the premises of the bank itself, or the mga financial institutions, they could also place this one. So to inform the borrowers that they are intending to comply with the requirements of the Truth in Lending Act. Okay. So this is an example of your full disclosure statement. Okay. So business name of the creditor, and the disclosure, so name of the borrower, address the borrower, so pila man ang loan amount, charges or deductions collected, so you need to specify here, and then monetary amount, monetary values, and then net proceeds of the loan. So loan amount, so for example, 1 billion, and then like in my case, I tried to avail of and kind of good for curiosity purposes. Kung sa kay process and SSS nga salary loan, so apply ko ko. So now that I loan amount. So for example, I loan 40,000. Here is 40,000. And then other charges, so now like service charge, CSSS, so my ibutang na other charges. And then the total of these other charges will then be deducted from the total loan amount. So therefore, ang net proceeds na po is this much na lang. So although 40,000 akong loan amount, ang akong net proceeds is less than the loan amount because there are other charges or deductions. And then schedule of payments, kung single payment, meaning lump sum siya, meaning the whole, the entire loan amount will be paid kanang fully on a specific date. So we have here the maturity date or the due date. And then installment payments, we have amortization schedule. Now you already are familiar with amortization schedules, correct? So for this, for this period or for the specific date, you will pay 10,000, and then another day 10,000, another day 10,000. So you have an amortization schedule for that, and then you should specify the effective interest rate in percentage this time. Okay, actually here, as part of the other charges or deductions, deduct sila of advance interest. So advance interest. And then ang actual interest nga every installment nga imong bayaran, so dito na siya mo show up sa amortization schedule. So imagine na lang katong usually yung amortization schedule mga buhaton gani pa naman to principal amount of installment, then pagkaman na may principal, then interest, then balance. Diba? Conditional charges that may be imposed if applicable. So if the borrower is intending to impose a late charge, if malate ka og bayad sa installment, so pila man. Repayment, so for example, if ang inyong sapot kay 12 months ni mo impason, and then nibayad ka, gi-pre-terminate ni mo, nibayad ka after 1 month, So naampo tayo usahay prepayment fee and other charges. So we have here the signatures of the creditor and the borrower. Okay. So the basic features are that the interest is charged on the outstanding balance at the start of each interest period. So just like what you learned in the preparation of an amortization schedule, diba? The interest is being computed based on the outstanding balance. And then there should be a disclosure of all charges incident to the loan, and then there should be a computation of the effective interest rate in all loan documents. So this is an example of an amortization schedule. Okay, so we have here the initial loan amount and then the payment of principal and interest, so on until maimbas. So what are the penalties if in case you fail to do your part as a creditor or as a lender, na wala ninyo na follow requirements such as in lending? We have a civil penalty. When we say civil penalty, bayron nun. Okay, bayron nun. Any creditor who violates the law is liable in the amount of 100 or in an amount equal to twice the finance charge required by such creditor in connection with such transaction, whichever is greater, except that such liability shall not exceed 2,000 on any credit transaction. So maximum of 2,000 only for each transaction. And then the action must be brought within 1 year from the date of occurrence of the violation. So if you feel that, if, for example, if you are the borrower and you feel that your creditor or lender was not able to comply with the requirements of the law, then you may file a civil case against such, or a case against the creditor, but the case must be filed within 1 year from the date of the occurrence of the violation. Otherwise, your cause of action will prescribe, meaning it's as if you have waived your right to ask for a remedy. And the creditor will also be held liable for criminal liability. Any person who willfully violates any provision of this law or any regulation issued thereunder shall be fined. So ang kaning fine lahi ni siya sa civil liability. So kaya ang civil liability is bayron lang yun siya. Ang kaning fine bayron nun sa siya but hindi siya nature bayron siya nga kuyo sa imong criminal liability. So this is over and above the civil liability. So fine by not less than 1,000 or more than 5,000, or imprisonment of not less than 6 months nor more than 1 year or both. So the court can actually choose whether he will just fine the creditor or he will imprison the creditor, or both, fine and imprisonment. Okay, so as a creditor, so if you plan to become a lender someday, mag 5-6 na lang ka, no? You have to comply with the requirements of the truth lending. Otherwise, you might be imprisoned. If your borrower will file a case against you because wala ka nag-provide o FDS at prior to the consummation of the loan transaction. Other liabilities, the creditor is also liable for reasonable attorney's fees and court costs as determined by the court. Of course, if your borrower has filed a case against you, the borrower paid for the attorney, diba, and the filing fees. So if mapildi ka, si creditor, mapildi ka, ma-prove dito sa court you really violated, then you also have to pay for the attorney's fees and court costs na nabayran sa imong borrower. A final judgment here, after rendered in any criminal proceeding under this act, to the effect that the defendant has willfully violated this act, shall be prima facie. However, the penalty shall not apply to the government. Ang hunaw gina sila, no? Sila naghimo sa law, pero dili applicable ang law nila. Sa on truth, But anyway, the law may be harsh, but it is the law, correct? So, but the penalty shall not apply to the Philippine government or any agency or any political subdivision thereof. So, if there is a violation of the Truth in Lending Act, will it have an effect on the contract of loan itself? So, except as specified in the law, nothing contained in this act or any regulation contained in this act or any regulation thereof will affect the validity or enforceability of any contract or transactions. So, on the part po, mura po siya o protection po sa creditor in a sense. For example, if the creditor failed to provide you with the FDS, no, so na violation, but it will act, the violation will not affect the validity of the contract. So the fact remains that you owe, if ikaw si borrower, the fact remains that you owe the lender or the creditor money. You cannot say nga, uy, you violated the Truth in Lending Act o what na, matiway na to ang ato ang contract of loan law. Okay? So any violation will not affect the validity or enforceability of your contract of loan. It's just that the person who violated will be subjected to civil and criminal liabilities. But again, it will not affect the validity or enforceability of your contract. So in effect, the contract or transaction remains valid or enforceable subject to the penalties katong atong gimension kanina, either civil penalties or criminal liabilities or penalties. Okay, so we have here a case, UCPB versus spouses Veloso. Tax, UCPB granted the spouses Veloso a PN or promissory note line under a credit agreement. The PNs or the promissory notes, however, did not contain the interest rate to be imposed on the credit, but instead gave UCPB the power to choose what interest rates to apply, ranging from 18% to 34%. So sa ilahang agreement daw, wala i-specify dito kung pila gyud ang interest rate. Iyang gibutang ra dito, pwede ra daw mamili si UCPB either 18 within the range of 18% to 34%. The issue in this case is whether or not UCPB is liable for violation of the Truth in Lending Act. So do you agree that yes, UCPB is in violation? Yes, no, very obvious. UCPB has fully violated. The Supreme Court held that this is a violation of the Truth in Lending Act, which mandates any creditor to disclose the true finance charges to its debtors, because if ang ilang gibutan dito is range lang, no, 18 to 34%, if you are the borrower, you will still be guessing. Pila jud ka ha. So wala jud a full disclosure. So ay violation sa law. How about this one? Okay. This is actually the snippet of the promissory note. Okay, it says here, okay, or value received ID or before of them. This is promissory note. The sum of lang pesos with interest thereon at the rate indicative of the DBT in retail rate or as determined by the branch head. So, pili wala jud na disclose kung pila sad ang pila jud ang interest nga ilang meron. Okay? So that is a clear violation of the. So any questions related to truth in lending? If none, you will proceed with AMLA. Sige, question. So, so far we have spent 2 hours now discussing special laws, and so far we have discussed PDIC, and then secrecy, and then truth in lending. So 3 pa no? So it's funny how we spent 2 hours for 3 items, I mean, in relation to your exam pa, tulo ra ka items, 2 kay usa-usa raman. So usa raman ka question kada special law. Giangkon man gud ang uban items sa uban pang mga laws, no, especially sa corporation code, daghan kay questions. But anyway, we go beyond kay lifelong learning by ato ang purpose. Now we still go beyond what is required lang for exam purposes. So although for the last 3 laws, special laws that we have discussed, tulo ra to ka items sa inyong part 1 exam, I believe that this is also beneficial. The knowledge of these laws are also beneficial to you, not just as students, no, but as individuals, you know, that are part of the society. So at least you know your rights. Yes, so this is not just limited to exam purposes. Anyway, so hearing no questions from you so far, so let's proceed to AMLA. Anti-Money Laundering Act, AMLA. So if you become also officers of the bank someday or bank employees, you will appreciate this more. Okay, sa AMLA, AMLA actually lays down specific procedures that covered persons should follow, especially banks. Kung ato ka sa bangko, you will have AMLA procedures there. So makitaan yun din yung first hand. Kasi bukat ng BI para to comply with the AMLA requirements. But as students of the law here, what we will learn is the basics applicable to all covered persons, not just banks. Okay, so in general ni siyang idea, of course, kay di man sa mga law students jud nga expected to know all the provisions sa AMLA. So only handpick those provisions that are, for me, relevant to accounting and accounting students and further CPA professionals. Okay. Makuba lagi siya na if ini-click na kung present ba sa PowerPoint. Anyway, just a quick overview of money laundering. So ilaunder ni mo ang imuhang kwarta. Sana all dato, no? Pero ilaundry lang ang kwarta. Anyway, so mo ni siya ang historical developments po sa la. So, ang recent na law amendment on AMLA is in 2021. So, bago-her jud. In fact, kani siyang bago nga law is not covered by our bar exam. Yes, our bar exam kay ang cut-off period is June 30, 2020 ng mga laws. So, this was not covered by our bar. But anyway, we will discuss the updated or the amended revisions as well. So there are several revisions to the law, perhaps because the government will try to really adopt current developments. No, kung nagka-high-tech ang panahon, nagka-high-tech sad ang mga kriminal. I-memorize nila mo all amendments. Na question box. I-memorize nila mo amendments. Ayaw na i-memorize. Dili na siya i-memorize. Dili. Unreasonable na sa kaya mga kanatong i-ask niya. Usara ba yung akong i-ask sa AMLA niya? Kanan dyan akong i-ask. Dili. Katong ka ng substance dyan ako ang focus. Okay? You need not memorize this. So, money laundering. What is money laundering? Imagine na, sige, kung dili money, laundering lang yun, like mag-laundry ka. Unsay purpose ka nung mag-laundry ka? Daw. Ano sa may purpose? Anong maglaba mo? Di mo manglaban, no? To clean, yes, to clean. So, to clean something, yes, para ma-clean. Manglaba mo, di mo malaba, no? Naman mo tiglaba, pero at least kaya ba mo sa purpose ka nang maglaba, to clean. So, therefore, to clean, does that mean nahugaw di siya? Kaya mo ko siya i-clean. Does that mean nahugaw imong ilon? Hugaw dyan na imong something italongry? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. So, yes. So, yes, Jude. Hugaw siya, attorney, or bagong gipalit. Ha, sakto. Pero nasa uban, guilty sa ko, if bago, lami mo king humot bago ba? Sahay, dili na ko labahan. Sorry po. Pero, is it a crime? Bitaw. Sahay. Pero, but most of the time, okay. Sakto. So, kung okay, that means, marag, there is a presumption na hugaw siya. So, atong labahan. Okay? Umura na siya. Inana nga concept, no, inana nga understanding, ito yung apply sa money laundering. Nganong i-laundry ang money? Because hugaw siya nga money. Diba? So, nganong i-laundry nimo ang money in the first place? Because hugaw siya nga kwarta. Imong labahan kununghay para mahimo siyang clean. So, if atong i-apply din, no? Kay nadawat nga hugaw nga kwarta, dili physically hugaw nga, uyaks, kay tanon kwarta hugaw man dyan. Dami dyan na bacteria and all. Hugaw dyan na siya. Physically. But in a legal perspective, hugaw siya because dili legitimate ang ihang sources. So, for example, nakadawat ng kwarta as your salary. Physically, hugaw ang kwarta, no? Kita ko nga na mga bullying. But that's not the dirty money that you're referring to. Okay, ang imong pagdawat sa imong sweldo is legitimate man. So that money is not dirty per se, no? But for example, gisugo ka sa isa ka person to kill someone else, and then ang imong prize or reward is 100,000, and which you did, you gladly killed the person. Okay, glakot sa ka atong kuan person kay marites kaayo, no? So imong gipatay, gitagaan kag reward 100,000. So that 100,000 is a dirty money, correct? And how can you make it clean? How can you make it clean? Example, you deposit the money to the bank. Okay, naka-existing, let's say naka-existing bank account. So na dito'y kuan, let's say naapod ka dito'y 150,000 based sa imong savings, and then ang 100,000 imong gi-add dito, imong gi-deposit dito. So when it was deposited to the bank, it appeared, and then later, let's say a week after, nag-withdraw ka sa bangko. Let's say nag-withdraw kag 50,000 out of the 100,000 nga money na nadawat mo for killing a person. Out of the 100,000, pag next week, withdraw ka og 50,000 gamit ang kanang imong ATM. Dito kag mall, isod mo imong card, type ka sa imong PIN, withdraw ka. Did mo allow og 50,000 ang ATM, let's say 20,000 din ang ATM. So 20,000 imong withdraw. When the money was withdrawn from the ATM, diba it appears na it came from a legitimate source, no? Kay nagud kay bank account, gi-withdraw ang 20,000. It's as if it came from a legitimate source. A space legitimate. A space legitimate. So, a legitimate source. So therefore, it's as if your money is clean. Diba? Nalabahan imong kwarta. From it being a dirty money, it became a clean money because it went through the bank deposit system, correct? So, process day of cleaning or mag-laundry ka sa imong monies when naay murag middleman nagiagian. So kumbaga kung ato siyang imagine, ang bangko imong gihimo nga washing machine. No, gisud di mo yung kwarta dito, di washing machine ang bangko. When it came out, clean na siya. Correct? Imagine mo. So, kaning mga covered persons later. Ako tong, di ba, nag-send ko list of covered persons. Ang kanang mga covered persons, mauna ang usual ginagamit nga mura og washing machine kunuhay sa mga criminals. When they receive a dirty money, dito nila ilimpyuhan through the covered persons, which is usually mga banking or financial institutions. So, iagi sa nila dito, and then i-withdraw, it appears like it's a clean money. Correct? So, I hope naka-appreciate mo no sa idea. So, money laundering is committed by any person who, knowing that any monetary instrument, or MI for short, or property represents, involves, or relates to the proceeds of any unlawful activity and transacts said monetary instrument or property. So, kabaw ka, knowingly made ni siya ha. So, ang kanidi ay nga criminal act no, of money laundering is intentional. Dili pwede nga by negligence. So, kailangan kaya ba in the first place na hugaw ni siya, and despite such knowledge na hugaw ang imuhang part or property, you transacted said parta property, or you converted, you transferred, you disposed, you moved, you acquired, you possessed, or used said monetary instrument or property despite the knowledge of it being hugaw. Okay, or despite such knowledge, you concealed or disguised the true nature, source, location, disposition, movement, or ownership of or rights with respect to said money, instrument, or property, or you attempted or conspired to commit money laundering offenses referred to in paragraphs A, B, C, A, B, or C above, can A, B, or C. You aided, abetted, assisted in, or counsels in the commission of money laundering offenses. So even if, because in the criminal law, if you study criminal law, we have principals by direct participation, we have accomplices, we have accessories. So, depende sa imong participation sa crime, no, kung igo ra ka ni help, but then di jud ikaw ang nag-commit ana, you are still liable under this or under this law. So what are these unlawful activities or predicate crimes? Because diba, a while ago, you have a classmate who asked na, ano many predicate crimes? So as I have mentioned, I think there are now 36. I think before sa katong 2021 amendment, we have 34 predicate crimes, but because of the amendment, I think the amendment added two more, so it became 36. If I remember it correctly. So the unlawful activities or predicate crimes, unsa pasabot, unsa yung nasabtan din yung predicate, kanang word na predicate. Sige daw. Unsa din ang predicate ay unsa din ang word. Sige daw. After sa subject in the sentence, predicate. Okay. The effect of something previous. Sige daw. Nagamit mo og laptop mo. I-search daw ninyo sa Google unsa jud ay nang meaning sa predicate. Base. Okay. Grabe na gid ako hilanat. Unsa naman ni more serious. Sige daw kung sa Google unsa predicate. to base a fact on another thing. Sakto, okay. So, kung ato siyang i-dissect yun, kung sa pasabot sa predicate crimes, foundation sakto, ang source sa kwarta nga imuhang palundri. So, nakaihugaw nga kwarta, asa di kagikan ana kwarta, nga hugaw nga kwarta. Mao na ang predicate crimes. Okay? So, dili tanan crimes. Diba, daghan magkaitag crimes, no? But only 36 are the predicate crimes mentioned by AMLA. So, any act or omission or series or combination thereof involving or having direct relation to. When in fact, maklaro man sa dimno, ang uban manggod nga crimes, dili necessarily na ay kwarta involved. No? But ang kaning mga predicate crimes that are included in your AMLA are those crimes na ay chance na makakuha kag kwarta out of it. Nga hugaw nga kwarta, and then imong ipalaundry sa covered persons. Okay. First, kidnapping for ransom. Sabtan. Okay, of course, namugaran sa money. One of the question of this. Drug trafficking and other violations of the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act. Maligya ka of drugs. Diba? Najud kay hugaw money. Graft and corruption. Very understandable remedy. Plunder. Robbery and extortion. Weteng and masyaw. Piracy on the high seas. Qualified theft. Swindling, estafa, smuggling, violations of the E-Commerce Act, kanang mga fraudulent transactions that are made online, na mga violations sa e-commerce, hijacking, destructive arson, murder, naman ay kasagaran mga prize or reward money, terrorism and conspiracy to commit terrorism. Of course, mga daghan kwarta dira no terrorism. Okay, of course they need money to finance their mga guns nila or kana malaki na the word escapes me, kana bang mga gamito nila para sa pag-atake to further their intention. Oh, weapons. Weapons. Thank you. Weapons there. Financing of terrorism, bribery, and corruption of public offices, frauds and illegal exactions and transactions. Kaning pasabot ang illegal exactions kataning sa kanang sa BIR gani. For example, ilahang kolektahon nun kay 100,000 ra yung 120. That is illegal exaction. Malversation of public funds. You use the public funds for your personal use. Forgeries and counterfeiting. Trafficking in persons. Kana mamaligya ka og kuan. Mamaligya kag person for whatever purpose. For let's say for slavery, for organs, diba? For sex slaves and all, diba? I'm sure kita sa mga movies galing mga movies na ipangpaligya ang mga persons na i-ship sila from one country to another, so that this trafficking in persons and then violations of the forestry code, anong illegal logging, yung may money involved, violations of the Philippine Fisheries Code, illegal fishing, gamit ng dynamite din ha. Anong konta nga na earn because of your dynamite fishing? That is considered as a dirty money. That's 21 violations of the Philippine Mining Acts. violations of the Wildlife Resources Conservation and Protection Act. Ano? Seal mo mga animals okay, well, I think you can already imagine violations of wildlife. Violations of the National Caves and Cave Resources Management Protection Act, carnapping, illegal or unlawful possession, manufacture, dealing in, acquisition, or disposition of firearms, munitions, and explosives, fencing, kay dili siya fencing now. Fencing. Oo, miss, tas kanon nila ang flesh sa person. Uy, kuya, manani nga movie, Fresh 2022. Daw, ba, tanahon ko ni, mas hindi, ay maayon kung tanaw ko nga movie, Fresh daw, 2022. Thank you sa movie recommendation. Okay, number 27, fencing. Sabot anang fencing type. Hindi na fencing, ay yung ma-imagine na nag-fencing, no? But, fencing type, anang kabaw ka na kinawat ang property, pero imo gihapon siyang gigamit or imo siyang gibaligya. Kaya mo pang kinawat. So, kana makitaan niyo sa carbon, daghan mga cellphones din nga gihilera, mga kinawat. So, if nipalit ka dira, you are guilty of fencing. Then, illegal recruitment of migrant workers, violations of the intellectual property code, nag-infringe mo, for example, Jollibee. No, Jollibee is a trademark that is a protected trademark under the law. That means if you want to create another fast food restaurant or any restaurant for that purpose, you cannot use the word Jollibee. But imong gyapon gibutan dito Jollibee. Yeah, instead of B, katong now may Jollibee, you just change a little portion of the mascot. So, tanan nimo kwarta na derive out of that infringement, that is considered a dirty money because you are in violation of the intellectual property code. Voyeurism. So, voyeurism, kanang mamuso ka or mang-video ka while persons are having sex, or while a person is kanang bathing in the shower, imong gi-videohan, niya imong gibaligya ang video. That's voyeurism. Child pornography. Naman to diha siguro kung somewhere in Earth na nakitaan ka tong child pornography nga ay murag isa ka house with computers, and then nasa mga bata dito nga magpa-video call sa mga foreigners, maghubo-hubo ang mga bata. That's child pornography. Anything that you have derived from that unlawful purpose is considered dirty money. Child prostitution. Karang diha sa kuan sa hungkera ba. First-hand experience ni sa akong friend din. Dili na ako but sa akong friend na ipangutana siya sa iyang ganahan. Bata ba daw, di tinuod na anak siya sa hungkera. Ang ganahan ka, nang uban bastos nga laki bang ganang bata or kanang minor ba? Like 15 years old, that is child prostitution. So, ang kwarta nga imong nakuha anak, if let's say ikaw ang bugaw, that is dirty money. Other forms of abuse. Fraudulent practices and other violations of the Securities Regulation Code. So, I don't know if Attorney Denila was able to discuss this new Securities Regulation Code, but if you are a corporation and you intend to sell shares or investment products, these should be registered first with the Securities and Exchange Commission, because if that is not registered, then illegal na siya. Like for example, kanang mga scam, gani nga networking, ba? O kana apil na siya sa number 33. Then number 34, These are offenses of a similar nature that are punishable under the penal laws of other countries. So, so even if they are not termed like, for example, kung voyeurism, even if they are not termed as voyeurism there in the other countries, but as long as it is of the same nature, you can be that crime can be considered as a predicate crime. And then these are the additional two there. These are the additional two under the amendment katong 2021 amendment. Uy, oh, di ba 36 June na sayo plan jud mo na gid ni resulta sa flu. Then 36 ni siya. Okay. Violation of section 9A, paragraph 3 of the Republic Act 1697, otherwise known as the Strategic Trade Management Act, in relation to the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction and its financing. So, we're nga siya ma-cover dito sa previous na numbers, gani nga katong itong ammunitions, katong mga firearms, but this time is mga weapons of mass destruction that are being traded. So that is also one of the predicate crimes. And then lastly, violation of section 254 of chapter 2, title 10 of the NIRC of 1997 as amended, where the deficiency basic tax due in the final assessment is in excess of 25 million per taxable year for each that covered, and there has been a finding of probable cause by the competent authority. I believe this involves mga tax evasion cases, gani mga in excess of 25 million. So your money will be considered as a dirty money. Okay, so those are our predicate crimes. So for the covered persons, let's see our separate list. Okay, I'll stop sharing first. So once I pasabot aning covered persons. So covered persons, I placed that in a separate file. Katong Google kaning Microsoft Word. These are the persons that are obligated to perform procedures related to the discovery and prevention of money laundering. Kay sila man ang usually nga himuon nga washing machine ba to wash off the dirt from the money. So can you see my screen here? For those who are not able to open their own file. Makita na. So these are your covered persons. So the can. Kaya kani sila usually agianan jud sa hugaw nga kwarta, and then later on mahimo na siyang limpyo kuno kay it appears as if the money is clean. So the covered persons include natural or juridical persons and refer to the following. Number one, jud ni sila. Okay. Most of the time, ano jud na malaunder clean ang kwarta. Banks, non-banks. Non-banks, ang pasabot ano yung non-banks is still dili siya bangko but are engaged in financial transactions, like quasi-banks, trust entities, foreign exchange dealers, pawn shops, money changers, remittance and transfer companies, and other similar entities, and all other persons and their subsidiaries and affiliates supervised or regulated by the Bangko Sentral of Pilipinas. So, of course, I'm not asking you to memorize this, but just remember that those companies supervised or regulated by the PSP, they are covered persons. Insurance companies, pre-need companies, and all other persons supervised or regulated by the insurance or supervised or regulated by the Insurance Commission. Securities dealers, brokers, salesmen, investment houses, and other similar persons managing securities are rendering services as an investment agent, advisor, or consultant, mutual funds, closed-end investment companies, common trust funds, and other similar persons, and other entities administering or otherwise dealing in currency, commodities, or financial derivatives based thereon, valuable objects, cash, substitute, and other similar monetary instruments or properties supervised or regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So for example, you receive your ransom money, kay kidnap anya ang ransom money 1 million, imong gi-invest in shares of stock, bright sa kay so mo siya og malimpyo kuno kay you invested it in shares of stock, and then later on, let's say you sold the stocks, ang proceeds sa imong pagsell sa imong stocks mo siya legitimate source kuno kay, di ba, because it appears as selling price na nakuha nimo from the sale of shares, when in fact the source mismo is some predicate crimes, no, na listed under our AMLA. Jewelry dealers in precious metals who, as a business, trade in precious metals for transactions in excess of 1 million. So, itong mga jewelry dealers, no? But as long as we're considered as dinagko na nga jewelry dealers, pero katong mga inato lang nga jewelry dealers, if their transactions do not exceed 1 million, then they will not be considered as a covered person. Because we also have to take note, no, for those predicate crimes, usually the amount involved is huge for the pinagko sa siya mga kwarta. Any precious metals, no? Jewelry dealers in precious stones, who as a business trade in precious stones for transactions in excess of, saying gapon, in excess of 1 million pesos. Company service providers, which as a business provide any of the following services to third parties: acting as a formation agent of juridical persons, acting as or arranging for another person to act as the director or corporate secretary of a company, a partner of a partnership, or a similar position in relation to other juridical persons, providing a registered office, business address or accommodation, correspondence or administrative address for a company, a partnership, or any other legal person or arrangement, and acting as or arranging for another person to act as a nominee shareholder for another person. So, more kang middleman. Persons who provide any of the following services: managing of client money, securities or other assets, management of bank, savings or securities accounts, organization of contributions for the creation, operation, or management of companies, and creation, operation, or management of juridical persons or arrangements, and buying and selling business activities. So, ang common denominator lang dyan nila, if you notice, if you act as a middleman and acting as such, you will be receiving money from a client, then managing that money for such client. Okay, that's in the process, dirty money will be cleaned. Notwithstanding the foregoing, the term covered persons shall exclude lawyers and accountants. Ginhawag lang. Exclude lawyers and accountants acting as independent legal professionals in relation to information concerning their clients, or where disclosure of information would compromise client confidences or the attorney-client relationship, provided that these lawyers and accountants are authorized to practice in the Philippines and shall continue to be subject to the provisions of their respective codes of conduct. For CPAs, we have the Code of Ethics, diba, for professional accountants. So there. And then casinos, including internet and ship-based casinos, with respect to their casino cash transactions. Look, nalipong na dyan, transactions related to their gaming operations. Masabtan naman sa, di ba, kay masagaran sa kaning mga kriminal mo sa hilig casino. So, walang kwarta rito, di mo na bet. And then, makanaog sila. So, ang kwarta nga ilang madawat for their kanang games, whether it's casinos. It appears as coming from a legitimate source. Real estate developers and brokers. You have money and then imo siyang gi-invest in real estate. Imo siyang legitimate source kuno kay offshore gaming operation, as well as their service providers, supervised or accredited or regulated by PAGCOR or any government agency. So we can also relate this to casinos, but this time offshore gaming operations. So wala diri sa Philippines, but are regulated by PAGCOR. Then those are also covered persons. So what does it mean when you become a covered person? Gani, you have the obligation to perform additional procedures to make sure that the money that you are receiving from a specific person came from legitimate sources, dili kay from dirty sources. Does this mean, attorney, na ang lawyers and accountants of companies who launder money cannot be covered under AMLA? Ang pasabot aning cover kaning kaniba ni siya notwithstanding lawyer not including lawyers and accountants. Pasabot they are not considered as covered persons, but they could still be held liable under AMLA if they violate an AMLA provision. But for purposes of determining who are covered, ang kasabot ra aning covered persons, i-determine na nato kinsay katong mga persons nga na ay obligation to perform AMLA procedures. Mo na sila ang AMLA. Mo na sila ang covered persons. But it doesn't mean nga if wala ka-appeal sa covered person, dili na sa maheld liable sa AMLA. It's just that ang kaning AMLA covered persons, these are persons specifically appointed by the law to perform AMLA procedures. Okay, sila may magdawat og kwarta, so they need to perform additional procedures. So what are these procedures? Let's go back to PowerPoint. So these are the major requirements from a covered institution or persons. They need to perform katong know your client procedures. They are required to submit covered transaction reports. So mo na siya ang purpose, not to point out kung covered person ka, you are required to perform this. But again, it doesn't mean if di ka covered person, actually, ang covered person, dili man na sila ang persons nga nag-commit sa crime. It's just that sila lang ang agianan. So that's why they are being mandated by the law to perform these know your client procedures, submission of covered transaction reports, and suspicious transaction reports. Later, we will define what do we mean by covered transaction and suspicious transaction. So the reports should be submitted within 10 banking days from the occurrence or knowledge of the transaction. So kanina ang covered transaction is more than 500,000 in a single day. So for example, karon nag-deposit ko og 600,000 sa ako ang bangko. So that will become, so di ba bank, nag-deposit ko sa bangko. Di ba bank is a covered person man, correct? So si bangko, naa siya obligation to report this kay covered transaction man siya. Ni-deposit man ko more than 500,000 in one single day. So mahook siya nga kana ipa-investigate na siya. So si bangko will submit a covered transaction report. Asa man na i-submit? Dito sa AMLC, Anti-Money Laundering Council. So kana siya ha. So kay ipa-investigate na dito covered transaction siya. So if you know that even if nalapas ka 500,000 imong i-deposit in one single day, kabaw ka nga from legitimate source na siya, then you need not worry. It's just that the bank, the covered person, has the obligation to report this after investigation kung legitimate na source. So dili ra nila unsaon. And then there are also suspicious transactions. So ang covered transactions based yun sa amount. But suspicious transactions, regardless of the amount, so bahalag 100,000 pa na, but it seems suspicious. Depende sa feel sa covered person, mas suspicious man anyway. Let's say, for example lang ha, ang imuhang bangko, ang sud 10 pesos ra for a very, very long time. And then all of a sudden, nag-deposit ka of 400,000. Okay? So what man siya nalapas of 500,000, so di siya covered transaction. But this appears as a suspicious transaction. So because regardless of the amount, if bank feels that this transaction is suspicious, then the bank, being a covered person, has the obligation to report it under the suspicious transaction report. Okay, and then covered persons are also being mandated to follow a strict record keeping procedure and training of their personnel. So mo tong ingon nga, if mahimo mo bank officers someday, you will also be trained on sa ilahang internal procedures with respect to AMLA. Okay, so mo na siya kung ingon ganina nga covered persons, di ba nga? Under PSP, Securities and Exchange Commission, and then those covered or regulated by the Insurance Commission. Okay, here. So these are the stages of money laundering. So sources of income, predicate crimes. Then the next stage is the placement. So you place your money, your dirty money, into the financial system. And then the goal here, then layering, is to conceal the when you deposit it, when you placed it, it will become like it will ang iyang nature will be converted. So that's layering, and then it will then be integrated or justified. It will look like coming from a legitimate transaction. So this will create an apparent legal origin for the criminal proceeds. And then the last stage is the integration. So since it already appears as coming from a legitimate source, then you can use the money for your own personal benefit. Okay, so these are, you need not memorize this habit, just to like understand the concept better. So again, to prevent money laundering, so these are the basic requirements of those covered persons. So they need to have your customer procedure, covered transaction reporting, suspicious transaction reporting, record keeping, AMLA training. We also have this freeze order. If applicable, then we have related and materially linked account. So what you will, if you are a covered person, example, if you're a bank, what you will investigate is not only the main account, but you also have to investigate the mga related accounts. Okay, and then we can also opt for Anti-Money Laundering Council bank inquiry. Diba? When we discussed secrecy of bank deposits, diba, this is one of the exceptions. So once din know your customer, KYC, it actually obliges the covered persons to know their customers. So how are they able to know the customer? They will have to ask one valid photo-bearing ID issued by an official authority. And then they need to ask the true and full name of the account owner or holder. So therefore, as a consequence, opening of new accounts without face-to-face contact and full compliance with the requirements is not allowed. However, because of our technology, kabantay mo, you can already open a new bank account without face-to-face contact. But however, in lieu of you doing it face-to-face, you will be asked to take a selfie. To verify your account, you need to take a selfie, and then you need to record a video. Move kasi imong head. Okay. Exceptions to the face-to-face requirement: the outsourcing arrangement, account open through an agent, nominee, or intermediary. And then we have a third-party reliance, wherein the bank, for example, has used a third-party entity to provide the necessary technology to satisfy these minimum requirements. So these are the valid IDs that are accepted sa atoang covered persons. And then covered transaction reporting, if there is a single transaction in cash or other, equivalent monetary instrument in excess of 500,000 within 1 day. Di lang nato i-discuss ha kay dili man sa nila ko kaning part very ko ano man gud siya detailed, so basta just remember what makes a transaction a covered transaction. So in here you can actually read this on your own, but there are mga transactions that are, so even if they are in excess of 500,000, but they are considered as low risk transactions. Okay, because apparently, they are from legitimate sources. Okay, let's say, for example, it came from the government. So, of course, that is presumed as legitimate. Suspicious transaction. Again, for suspicious transaction, regardless of the amount involved, where any of the following exists, any has, so presence of one will make the the transaction suspicious. Nakuha ng for a while. Okay. Okay, so there is no, for example, there is no underlying legal or trade obligation, purpose, or economic justification for the transaction. So for example, ato akong giingin na for a very long time, ang balance sa imong account is 10 pesos, and then all of a sudden, you deposited 400,000, and when asked, pangutana ka sa bank, pwede may mangutana kung asa na nagikan 400,000, and then wala kay mahatag nga justification, then that becomes a suspicious transaction. And then when the client is not properly identified, when an amount involved is not commensurate with the business or financial capacity of client, let's say based on your KYC, you know that the occupation of such client is just, for example, a tricycle driver, and all of a sudden nakadeposit siya of 400,000. So that one is not commensurate with the financial capacity of the client. So although it did not reach the threshold for covered transaction, you have to report it as a suspicious transaction. The transaction is structured in a manner that invites suspicion. So this one is very, very general, Rajud. If feel Rajud sa covered person was suspicious Rajud siya transaction, then it has the discretion to report it as a suspicious transaction. Transaction is observed to deviate from the profile or past transactions of the client. So may an outlier transaction, dili siya usual transaction ni client. So that could be a suspicious transaction. Transaction is related to an unlawful activity or offense if you have the information that the amount is related to an unlawful activity, despite it not reaching 500,000, then you can report it as a suspicious transaction. Transaction that is similar or analogous to any of those that I have mentioned. So here are some common red flag indicators which makes the transaction a suspicious transaction. Repetitive deposits, withdrawals that cannot be satisfactorily explained or do not make any economic or business sense. Transaction amount is roughly above what the client is capable of earning. Client is conducting a transaction out of the ordinary business interest. Deposits by individuals having no connection or relation with the account holder. Client is receiving remittances from a country where none of his family members is working or residing. Client was mentioned in the news to be involved in a terrorist or any unlawful activities. Okay, so the things listed here are very much understandable in that sense. Okay, suspicious transaction reporting on multiple transactions. You can do this for at least, if there are at least 50 or more transactions to report. This one is po administrative duties. So I believe as CPAs, we are not allowed, we are not, rare kahit nga maka-encounter ano. So, ano usual mga employees. Record keeping. So, if you are a covered person, you must retain the file for an additional period of 10 years after the case has been finally resolved or terminated by the court. And for closed accounts, you should retain the information related to that at least 10 years. Okay. Let's skip this na lang. Okay, I think that's the last one. All right, so 12:01. Any questions?